Welcome to Spark Starter, the podcast dedicated to sharing stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I'm your host, Elizabeth Goede, and I'm here to fan the flame of your entrepreneurial spirit. Each week, we bring to you the inspiring stories of women trailblazers from around the world who have sparked change in their industries, powered their ideas into thriving businesses, and pioneered their way to success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a startup enthusiast, or a seasoned business leader, join us as we delve into the journeys of these incredible women whose tales will surely ignite a spark in each one of us. Today, my guest is someone who embodies the spirit of global entrepreneurship and is dedicated to empowering women to live life on their own terms. Sally Pederson is the visionary founder of Global Citizen Life, a consulting firm that helps individuals embrace a global lifestyle. As a #1 international best-selling author and acclaimed speaker, Sally has an incredible wealth of experience and wisdom to share. She has lived in 5 countries and traveled to over 45. She holds multiple residencies and has a dual citizenship. And in 2016, she even became a world champion. But beyond her impressive achievements, what truly sets Sally apart from her mission is to empower others, particularly women entrepreneurs. Through her work at Global Citizen Life, she specializes in helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and freedom seekers achieve financial security, independence, and freedom of global citizenship. Sally is passionate about giving her clients beyond the constraints of borders, ensuring that they have the strategies and support needed to live wherever they choose. Her own journey as a woman entrepreneur living in a global lifestyle is an inspiration to all of us. Sally, I want to welcome you here to the Spark Starter Podcast. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Sally, when you filled out all your information and I read through it, I couldn't help but, being really envious of all the countries that you've been to and traveled to, and the fact that you're also a dual citizen. So, if we can start back, I always like to sort of travel back in time, which is where did the inspiration come from to start, a sort of luxury travel business?
There was something I remember one time I had to be about 15 or 16. I was in high school at the time. And I don't remember all the details. I'm assuming it was probably wintertime, being cold outside because I hate cold weather. And I remember then saying to my friends, no, I think I was switched at birth. That's what I said. I think I was switched at birth. And they looked and they said, "What? Your parents aren't your parents?" And I said, "Not literally switched." I said, "But I just don't feel like I'm meant to live in Canada my entire life. Like it just doesn't feel right for me." And so there was something back then that I knew that things needed to change. I mean, but I was in high school. I was still a teenager. So it started then, but even prior to that, I think I basically came out of the womb an entrepreneur. I did start very early. Kids at school would make fun of me that I would walk my lawnmower more than I would walk my dog, because I would go around and mow people's lawns if they wanted, shovel their walks in the winter, and just did various things. And to me, it just seemed so natural. But the travel part, I really didn't start traveling until I was an adult. And then I had a child and stuff too. So it didn't really take off until when I really started to travel a lot more was probably when I hit 40. Prior to that, I did like annual trips and vacation and things like that. But it wasn't until I was about 40 when, I became an empty nester, and I was like, why stay in one place? Now's the time to really just go do whatever I wanted to do. And so there was a few things leading up to that, but that was I think kind of that changing point.
Well, it's interesting to hear that you sort of knew this so early, in life, and that you described it as is sort of, being switched at birth, I think is a really funny way. But when you think about, being young and everything's very dramatic. And so, you've been a lot of places. I mean, 45 countries is certainly nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, I continue to run across people that maybe have never even left the United States, or, people that have never left whatever their home country is.
Mm-hmm.
So when you continue to evolve in your career and in your business and your family, and you decide, when you hit sort of 40 to go on the road, go on the circuit, how many countries had you already been to by the time you were 40? And then how many have you traveled to after, approximately? I mean, unless you've tracked it.
Probably in the years before. So when I was around 35, I did over a decade ago, I moved to Costa Rica. But even though I was living there, I had probably been to about half a dozen-ish countries prior to that. Moved to Costa Rica. My daughter was still in school then, so didn't travel as much, did a lot more trips back to Canada and Costa Rica. But then once she decided that she wanted to move back to Canada, and I said, I don't want winter. I hate that. So we decided, and she was old enough that she moved back to Canada. I stayed in Costa Rica for a little while. And then I just figured, I mean, I'm an empty nester now. Why just stay here in one place? And then since then I traveled to a lot more countries.
Well, I love even the independence, really, in a way, of your daughter to say, listen, this is where I feel at home. I want to go back here. And then the freedom that you had to sort of stay, where you wanted to be, that was sort of, I don't know, making your heart sing, for lack of a better way to describe it. So when did you decide that you wanted to integrate travel into your business? Like, how did that, it's one thing to sort of feel like you were more satisfied by living somewhere else, but when did you decide to connect the two?
Well, that would have been when I was in Costa Rica. So prior to that, moving there, I had a national construction safety business. So we did a lot of safety training. And then I kind of shifted out of that, but kept some of that business running while I was in Costa Rica, going back to Canada, and had great employees. And then from there got into writing, and just writing initially about health and wellness and things that I would teach about within first aid and CPR classes. And then once my daughter left and I realized I wanted to travel more, I thought, well, how can I travel and still work? And so I shifted that writing from writing about health and wellness into writing about travel.
Yeah, I love that. And then obviously you've evolved it even further, because you're also helping people figure out how they can sort of accomplish the same thing. So, Sally, a lot of, having our own business is full of all the things that we don't necessarily know to even expect when we start a business. And of course, because you've had your own business for a long time, it might be hard to remember some of these questions. But maybe you can just take it in perspective of how you feel now. But what would you say has been the most difficult thing about having your own business?
The most, I mean, one is you have to be prepared financially, or, or live simply. A lot of things, people think I'll be happy when I make $1 million or this or that. But the reality is very few people are going to all of a sudden start making a lot of money in their business. And so they have to be either, what I tell people now is, if you have a job, unless it's a toxic environment, don't quit your job yet. Start working on that business, build it up, and get things going. So, maybe you don't have to be making the exact amount that you have, because a lot of us, we can live off less than what we're making, because we have a lot of things that we don't necessarily need. Like some of those car payments, do you really need that type of car? Sometimes our homes, do we really need a house that big? Like, we have to kind of ask that. And, if to each their own for whatever they have, but if you want that change. And when we look at other countries and we look at the happiness index, most of the countries that are on top of that happiness index almost all of the time are not materialistic countries. Right. And we all know that we have met the millionaires, the billionaires and stuff who have failed marriages, addiction issues. They're just not happy either. So I think initially we have to think about what would make you happy, because when you start a business, it's a lot of work. However, I don't feel like I work. Like, I easy can do 12-hour days, no problem. But I
Mhm.
love what I do, so I don't feel like I'm working.
Right.
And so, the finances don't always come with that immediately. Sometimes some people do. They hit things great, it works, and fantastic. But I think to first be what really makes me happy, and how much money do I really need? And so how much time do I give myself to build up to that income level? Because the thing about business sometimes is, just because you have a few good months doesn't mean it's smooth sailing for in the
It's
future.
true.
So
It's
you
true.
have to be able to prepare for some slower months, or you try something new. And in business we have to, and it doesn't quite work. Or I'm preparing for my first summit. I've never done a summit before, and I've already had some learning curves with that, which is great because now I know for the next one. So the
Right.
first one, it'll be good. Not sure how it'll work out, but no matter how it does, it'll be good. But it's then learning to make it better each time over.
Yeah, there are so many things you just covered that I want to just dive into. I mean, making sure that you actually love the thing that you do. It's like you've
Mhm.
made this choice to do it. I always am surprised when people, are just sort of like, what can I do? And they're asking other people. It's like, well, I mean, certainly you can take that as an idea, but like, you should really love the thing that you're doing because it is a lot of work, and certainly preparing for it. I mean, it's a little bit like having your own business can be a lot of feast or famine. It can be the fact
Mhm.
that, sometimes you're making so much and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so fantastic. And then you're sort of like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a little bit nervous about, being able to pay for things. And you're exactly right about making sure that you sort of have cash on hand to be able to satisfy, where you are. And so, we certainly focused on where the trouble areas can be, or where the difficult areas can certainly be. And I can imagine that even having an international business and in sort of, living all over the world, one of the questions that I have for you is, when you're in other countries and you are working, right, depending, doing your writing, that type of thing, do you actually have to get visas that allow you to work in those countries, or how do you navigate that piece?
Um, Technically, I always say I am on vacation or I'm traveling, because I mean, and it is a bit of a gray area until it changes and it's from each country. But even though I am working, I'm not technically working, because I'm not doing a job that takes away from somebody. I'm not having business meetings with people and
Mm,
getting paid to be there.
right.
And so it's kind of the same thing when people speak for conferences,
Mm,
and they don't go to the other country and say, "Oh yeah, I'm here working. I'm speaking at a conference," right? So there are some gray areas. Now there are some countries that I've heard that have said, even if you're working on your book and you're here for X amount of time, technically you are working here. So, and it is a bit harder, I think, now too, because so many people are digital nomads and they travel
right.
working on whatever they're doing, coaching, things like that. So it is technically, yes, they're working, but really, no, they're not, because we're not working at a kind of like office job or company or in a building working. So, um, I don't want to give advice to say what to do or not to do. It does depend for each person on what they do, and it does depend for each country as well. So they would have to look into that. But for the most part, with my travels, I've not had an issue at all.
Well, I mean, I was just more so curious because of the digital nomad and all those types of things. And
Mm.
and certainly it's not like you're consulting the people that are right there. So I was just more so curious. So thank you very much for sharing your
But
insights
I'll
on that.
just to add into that though too. Generally, I'm we need to look at how many days people are in a country as well, because then that would potentially have an effect for tax purposes. But if somebody's only somewhere for a month, maybe 2 months, I mean, depending on how much time they're allowed, but they have to be careful with that as well. Generally, anything as kind of a golden rule, we use 183 days. So that would be something for people to be aware of too.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the difference between the US and Canada and things like that are very different as well. And
Mhm,
there's tons of things wrapped up into taxes and all of those
mhm.
fun types of things. So sort of pulling things back, what do you think has been the biggest, I don't know, success or thing that has given you the greatest joy about having your own business or with having your own business?
I think for me, I mean, it's a catch. It's the greatest joy, but it's also you have to be disciplined because when I first started working from home, working by myself, and I've been doing this for over 2 decades, well over 2 decades. So working from home was not a thing. My friends, if they would call
Mhm.
and I'd talk for a minute and I'd say, okay, I've got to go. And they'd say, why? I said, because I'm working, but you're at home. And so, and it's easy when you first start, as people learned through the pandemic, it's easy to, clean the house, do laundry, unstack the dishwasher. So you have to first have that discipline. But for me, it's also the freedom where I
Mm.
can be in easily 8, 9, 10 different countries in 1 year, and I've done more than that before. um and I can come and go. Like, I don't have to wait for a week's vacation. I can work till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning if I get into writing something or I'm working on something, because I know for the next 2 days I'm not working at all. And it could be a Monday, Tuesday, because I'm traveling somewhere, I'm going somewhere, I just want the day off, or there's an event, or it's a nice beach day and the weather hasn't been great and I just want to go, and I can, and I don't have to ask for permission or be limited to what I can do and where I can be.
Yeah. I mean, it's really the freedom, right? I mean, it's the freedom to sort of be wherever you wanna be and the style to, work however you wanna work, which is fantastic. So, one thing that always I find fascinating is what is the biggest surprise? Like when you think about starting your business and even how your business has
Mm.
evolved, right? I mean, where you sort of started and where you were to where you are now has really taken a dramatically different, windy path, I will call it. And so, what has been the biggest surprise for you?
Oh, geez. I mean, I think one thing that just kind of comes to mind right now is, so I'm the type of person that thinks somebody is only as good as their word. And so I'm thinking, if I'm working and I'm working with other entrepreneurs, they're gonna, be where they say they're gonna be. They're gonna be on time. They're gonna do what they say they're gonna do. And I've really found, and maybe that's why some people struggle. I don't want to say that struggle with being entrepreneurs, but sometimes it's hard because when we depend on other people, some
Mm.
people are just flaky. That they say they're going to get something to, or they want to, like my podcast, for example, and not even mine. Like, and any podcaster probably knows this, that people say, oh yeah, I'm going to be there. And then if we're lucky, the day before they cancel. Sometimes it's shortly before, minutes before, or they just don't show up. And I've had the opposite, where I've been on somebody's podcast, made the appointment to everything, they didn't show up. So I thought, okay, I always try to give the benefit. Maybe an emergency happens. So I rescheduled, and they said, reason for rescheduling, I'm like, you didn't show up. And then they didn't show up a second time. So
Oh my gosh.
it just shocks me that some people can say, they're entrepreneurs, they're business owners, they're whatever. But if you have a podcast and you don't show up as the host, like, things like that shock me and surprise me. That you know just how we think that we can depend on people, but nothing is ever written in stone until it's with a podcast, until it's done and published, because it could be done and then never get published. So just because there's an agreement, just because something is partially done from everything that we could do, doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a disheartening surprise. But unfortunately, I mean, I think it is important to talk about it because,
Mhm.
I think it's when you think about having a business, it does afford you freedom and flexibility, but you still have responsibility, right? I mean, I think that that's where I would draw that separation there. You know,
Mhm.
you have a responsibility to show up to your meetings. You have a responsibility to show up to your meetings on time, you know, and follow up, right? If it's something that you, I mean, I do remember getting quite sick with COVID, and I do remember you know, having to cancel a meeting very short notice, which I felt terrible about. But you know, even on my deathbed, I was still like trying to cancel things and like reach out to people.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that, you know, you need to be a workaholic or, you know, that type
No.
of thing, but I think it's just taking to consideration that everyone's time is worth something. So,
Yeah, I
so
think
thank you for bringing that up.
yeah, and just for me, because I think time is our most valuable asset that we have. You know, money comes and goes. We can make more, we can spend more, we can win the lottery, we can lose it all on a bad investment. So money comes and goes, but we only have so much time on this earth. And
Mm,
none of us really, we don't know how much time we have. And so the time that we choose to spend with family, to work, to do the things we want to do, our hobbies, whatever it may be, that is our most important asset. And I hate wasting time, because if somebody doesn't show up for my podcast, I could work on something else, or I could,
right,
you know,
right.
go to the gym or whatever it is that I want to do. And so it's just
Mm,
having that respect for the most valuable thing that a person can give you.
mm. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I would say, in addition to time, it's also our relationships. And,
Hmm.
you know, it's also what you potentially jeopardize in those relationships as well. So, one thing, Sally, we haven't talked about, and I teased it a little bit in the intro, but I have got to know about this motorized rickshaw challenge.
So that was a very fun thing to do when my friend told me about it. So it was in India. And when she first told me about it, I was like, I'm in. Like, it just sounds amazing. And if you think about it, most people know like the Amazing Race. And so if you think of the Amazing Race, where they go across the world, or there's one in Canada that they do across Canada, and you've got these challenges that you have to do. So this was very similar, but it was in India. And there were, I think we had about 12 or 14 teams, and from all over
Wow.
the world. And there was either 2 or 3 people per team. And we had to drive a tuk-tuk, or a motorized rickshaw, and it ended up being over 1,200 kilometers throughout India. Every day we have breakfast, and then they would give us a piece of paper and say, okay, here's your challenges for today, go. And we would have to
Wow.
just go and complete the challenge. And then at the end of it, it would be, this is where you need to kind of finish, or check in at the hotel that we stayed at. And yeah, it was pretty fun, pretty exciting. I loved it. I'd never been to India before. There was the actual challenges of the race. There was the challenges of the heat and being there and driving a tuk-tuk. Like, I loved it though. To me, it was so much fun. Um, and then the challenges that I'm not big on Indian food. I don't eat a lot of spicy things or a lot of different things. So thankfully my team was great. They would always try all the different dips and things too, and then taste it and let me know if it was too spicy or not. But I think a couple of times there was a few that were really good, and they just wanted a little extra for themselves. But it was great. And yeah, and so we won. So we were the 2016 motorized rickshaw world champions.
So
It was such an
how many people
adventure.
are
It
on
was
your
so great.
such an adventure?
It
How
was
many
just 3
people
of
were
us
on your
girls. There was 3 of us girls.
team? I love this even more. And had any of you been to India before?
The 2 had, but I had not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
So
I was
I was
thinking
the only
about
one
how
that knew
difficult,
nothing.
well, I was going to say how difficult it would be to navigate 1,200 kilometers in a country you know nothing about.
Yeah. Yeah, and driving, when I was driving, I was just like, just don't stop unless kind of red light need to, but they're like, you just don't stop. You just go. And luckily it was, we did well, and it was a lot of fun. And it was
Oh,
so, at one point too, I was thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? This is crazy, before getting there. And it's just one of those things of, just do something exciting, get out of your comfort zone. You don't realize what you can do, and how you can do things that you just don't think you can until you're kind of until you have to in a way.
Mm.
And with this, we knew, you know, chances of something bad happening are low. I mean, there was another team that their front wheel off their rickshaw fell off as they were going 60 kilometers an hour
Wow.
down the highway and had to go to the hospital. And so after that, everybody's like checking all their wheels because we had to maintain ours as well. Um, but we knew that, you know, there was hospitals there was obviously people there that if something bad happened, the organizers we could contact. So there was still that safety net in extreme cases. But yeah, it's very fun. And I think, you know, for people who love adventure, go do a motorized rickshaw challenge in India. And there's a number of them that go on and happen and things. So do something
Yeah,
adventurous.
I love that sense of adventure. I love the whole I've never been there. And had you ever even driven a rickshaw before?
No, no, not even like a scooter or a moped or nothing like that. So it was all, what am I doing? Yeah,
Oh my
it was
gosh, I
all
love
very
it,
new.
Sally. So with all these countries you've been to, and you know, some you've obviously stayed a little bit longer and then others, what has been the most fascinating country, like the one that you know that you'd want to go back to?
One of my favorites is Italy.
Mm,
I
mine
I
too.
just love Italy. I love the countryside. I love the cities. I love the architecture. I love Italian wine and food and even the language when they're talking, they're using their hands. And there was when I was living in Barcelona, there was an Italian store. And whenever I'd go in there, if there were people in there talking or in Italian, I would stay in the store longer and pretend I'm looking at stuff. And they would say, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 just keep talking. It's okay." Just so I could listen to it and hear the language. But yeah, it is one of my favorite countries, absolutely.
So have you picked up any foreign languages while you've been you know, on your trip, or have you found that you can actually make it by not speaking any of the languages of the
I
countries?
my Spanish is okay. I mean, for the amount I've been in Spanish-speaking countries, it should be much better. But because I'm in and out so much, that's my excuse. But generally speaking, English is so widely spoken that it has been okay. The only times, obviously, when you're dealing with government things, then needing somebody to translate and government documents, obviously, you need somebody like that. But the only other time that I can think of, but it's such a memory that sticks with me. I was with a friend of mine, and she had planned a trip, and I think this one we were either in Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan. So we
Mm,
did a four-stand loop. We went Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And it was within one
okay.
of them, we went into the restaurant. And most restaurants at least will have some pictures. This one had nothing. And nothing was in English. It was in their local language and Russian. And the girl came over and said something to us. And we're like, "Oh, we don't know. Do you speak English?" And she's like, "No." So we're thinking, how do we communicate? And my friend remembered one word of their main dish that they had. So because we're kind of looking at each other for a minute or two, and then she remembered it. And we're like, "Oh," so then she knew we wanted to eat. And so she said a few other things. We kind of looked at each other and just said, "Oh, okay, sure." And we ended up with all of this food and tea, and it ended up being really good. But sometimes, yeah, it can have some challenges, but that was one rare instance, and we all laughed, and it was good. But sometimes it's just knowing one word, like
Yeah.
one word, and it's just a memory from that trip that really stands out.
Well, and with artificial intelligence coming all the way that it has, I mean, certainly the latest 4.0 you know, model that has come out, GPT 4.0 that's come out from ChatGPT is certainly even making that a little bit easier. Although I'm not sure that it's quite handling all those languages quite yet. So, Sally, as we you know, come towards the end here, I would love for you to sort of talk a little bit about what the offering is that you have for other women business owners out here that are
So
listening.
basically, what we do is it can be a total package or even just parts because everybody's in different stages of life. So we help business owners legally reduce their taxes to zero or single digits, protect assets, open up international bank accounts, and get residencies and citizenships for them. And this way it's for asset protection. And some people have residencies and citizenships, which it doesn't mean that you have to live there. And so you could have it for just in case something happens. So for example, during the pandemic, when people couldn't travel, I was still able to travel because I could say, well, I'm a citizen here. Oh, then I'm heading back. Oh yeah, I'm a citizen here. Or, oh, I have residency here. I can still go. And so it's what I say. It's so you're never stuck under the control of any one single government. Because if you have more than one residency or citizenship, you can always move around and leave. If you have your corporation in a low tax or no tax country, then you're saving money on taxes. So you can put that back into your corporation. If you pay yourself, then you're paying still personal taxes, but you just have more options and more security, really. And what we say is true freedom, because people think they have freedom, but we've realized through the pandemic that the government can not renew your passport. People think, oh, it's my passport. I am from Canada, the US, whatever. It's mine. I'm entitled to it. No, you're not. That passport is property of the government, and you are not entitled to it if they don't want to give it to you for any reason whatsoever. And if they don't want to, you can't travel anywhere in the world. We saw Canada freezing bank accounts for people who were protesting. Like, they were protesting and their bank accounts got frozen. What would happen if your bank account was frozen? Could you pay your mortgage, put gas in your car, buy groceries? So if you at least had another bank account in another country, you could pay for those things until the issue got resolved. And I have people that say, oh, well, I don't protest. Well, great. You don't protest if you donate to a protest in this situation. Or what about now with identity theft? Or, your account gets hacked, your bank gets hacked and things. I mean, it's not just, protesters or you have to do something bad. It can be a number of other things that can happen. And so it's security. It's like an insurance policy. It's a backup plan.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to consider. I mean, I think it's also even just the freedom of being able to travel, whenever you want to, wherever you want to. So, Sally, if people are excited and want to know more about how they can take on this sort of global lifestyle and take advantage of some of the other offers that you have, what's the best way for people to reach out and get in touch with you?
The best I would say is to go to the website, globalcitizenlife.org. And there's a lot of information there. We have a contact form as well. I am on all the different social medias, but some of them is Global Life Citizen Consultant. So it's best to go to the website, globalcitizenlife.org, and then connect with me through there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's a fascinating and exciting life that you live, not being held within borders. That's for sure. So Sally, what I ask every guest at the end of the show is to give one word or a short phrase that would be inspirational or encouraging for a woman who wants to start or grow her business.
What just popped into my mind, and it's a saying, and I don't know who actually said it. But it's never let the fear of striking out stop you from playing the game, or it's something along that. So, I mean, just do it. I don't believe in failure. Everything is a learning experience. How many times did we fall down learning to walk, to ride a bike, mistakes driving a car, to doing what you're doing in the career that you're doing and going to school? Everything is learning, and everything is figure outable. That's a word I recently heard, and we can figure it out. It's just learn and try and learn and try.
Yeah. And frankly, we learn a lot more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. So,
we do, because I don't want to do that again.
Exactly.
And I've said that many, many times. Ooh, don't want to do that again. But that's how we learn.
It is how we learn. And Sally, I just want to thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been a delight learning all about your windy path to get to where you are now. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today on the SPARK StartHer Podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing you the uniquely inspiring stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I've been your host, Elizabeth Goede, and on behalf of all the awe-inspiring women entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to not only dream big, but to ignite those dreams into action. Remember, every spark can lead to an extraordinary fire. So keep the spark alive for today, tomorrow, and the vibrant future beyond. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to never miss a spark. Until next time, stay ignited. And I know we've had several people joining us live today, and I want to make sure to give the opportunity for any of them that might have a particular question for Sally and her, global adventures, to make sure to drop it in the chat and or drop a comment it below. And we'll get Sally to answer those. And I know that there's a little bit of a delay and a lag sometimes with those coming in. So Sally, can you talk a little bit about, I do actually have a friend who moved to Uzbekistan, oddly enough, as a country to move to. But when you think about sort of these different sects of the world, right? You've got sort of like Asia, and you've got the Middle East, and you've got Europe, and Eastern Europe. What would you say has been the easiest to navigate from your sort of nomad type of lifestyle, or your international type of lifestyle? Where has been the easiest place for you as sort of a North American citizen to start with? Where has been the easiest place for you to navigate?
I mean, for me, I would think right away if somebody they're going abroad first time, and maybe it's just like a trip or they're checking things out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the UK is so much like North America. They speak English. It's great. Europe as a whole, I'll say is fairly easy because there's so many English speakers. Like Europeans speak 3, 4, 5 languages. It's crazy. They think we're weird for only speaking one. But each country is a little bit different too. So Spain, for example, most things still close in the afternoon, and partially because it gets so hot in the summer. So they close for a few hours in the afternoon, and dinner time there is around 10, 11 o'clock at night. Now I haven't been able to do that. My latest for dinner is 8 o'clock. If I go with friends, then maybe I'll have a small salad or a little something, because that's their part of their culture and social life. So there is those types of adjusting, and you have to be aware that every country has things that are a little bit different. But Europe, I think, is fairly easy to navigate. I would also say Mexico, if people want to stay close. Mexico, Costa Rica, I lived there too, and it's quite easy. I mean, Spanish is, you have to learn more of Spanish in parts of Costa Rica, but if you're in Tamarindo and some of those, they call it actually Tamagringo, because there's so many people who live there. But those, I would say, starting off with would be good places to start with.
Yeah. And, I forgot to ask you, Sally, but where is you have a dual citizenship. So I'm assuming you have Canadian citizenship. Where's the other?
I generally don't disclose where I have my citizenships and residencies.
Okay.
Just for privacy purposes and things, that I don't share that, but it was through family, right? So there's different ways to get it, right? Like depending upon if your parents were born from Europe. So my dad was, and some places will even go back to grandparents as well.
Sure.
And so that's a way to do it. If you want to, and you can move somewhere. So if you're self-employed business owner and you can move to, say, France for roughly a minimum 5 years, and you learn French, you can become a French citizen that way. And then some other places are more 7, 8, 10 years. And then there's what they call also citizenship by investment. And that's basically you make a donation to the country, and then they will give you a passport and citizenship in return. But those are starting at, they're in the Caribbean, and they're just increasing them now to, I don't know if they've officially increased it yet, but it was going from $100,000 to $200,000.
Oh, interesting.
So it's either family history, you spend time somewhere, or you spend the money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if that's the type of lifestyle you're looking for, then you should be prepared to be able to make those investments.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks, Sally, like we didn't get any questions that I can see right now from our time together. But I just want to thank you again for joining us for this little bonus section that we added on to the end. And I want to thank again all of the listeners that joined us today. I genuinely appreciate everybody tuning in a couple times a week when we profile these amazing women and their accomplishments. So until next time, we'll see you back here.